Welcome to Get Serious. Excited to be jumping into another episode today. I'm going to be focusing on a newer, or at least an adaptive strategy for physical mailers to stir up potential buyers for this Louisiana property that we are working on. Before I get into that, I'll save it for another episode, the longer deep dive, but I have been working through the user flow on the Land Pricer AI tool and the comp search piece. Still some bugs to sort out here, which we are readily addressing, but I just couldn't be more excited. Like, it is pulling up, the correct comps and price weighting for a property that we actually just funded. So, I'm able to reverse engineer precisely what should have happened during the process, and it is working super smoothly. Like, I can't wait to deliver further on this product. So I just wanted to shout out what's going on there, but more to report. And now back to our full episode about these buyer mailers. So you've heard me talk a lot about this larger Louisiana subdivide, bit over, roughly 32-acre property split into 3 child parcels, a whole bunch of value add done, beautiful home sites, driveways installed. It's the best available land in the parish. Market has been slow. I could do a whole bunch of other reporting on this, starting to open up a bit more. We still feel very confident about our properties, and we have so much equity and margin still built into them. And, just got a recent inquiry earlier this week from a prospective buyer that's supposed to go visit. So we'll see how that pans out. But this is still a number one priority for our business. So like every day it's like, okay, what else can we do to encourage the dispo side on this particular property? So we went back and forth with the broker. I have extensive conversations with him, exploring, could we potentially cold call or text, neighbors or, other landowners in the area. He was kind of lukewarm at best on that, just, I guess, culturally down there. And, again, we have a very premium parcel, so it's like, we don't want to come off as desperate selling it. So it's like a fine line to walk. But he was indicating, okay, he thinks that a properly positioned mailer could work well, of like, hey, showing how beautiful these properties are from the photos, and just like, hey, these are executive estates, premium wooded home sites. Like, one of these properties, we think the flag lot is like the best property in the entire parish, at least still vacant land parcel. Plus, it's in the number one ranked school district in all of Louisiana. Like, there's just a lot going for that area. And so we initially asked we put together the initial flyers here, which they were going to be one pagers, and they were a little text heavy, and we, tried to utilize ChatGPT to set something up for us based on my conversation with the broker. Sent it back over to him. He's like, yeah, I think that's a bit text heavy. And he sent over, based on some work on Canva, postcard strategy instead. It's like, hey, let's try to really make sure the photos pop here, do a postcard, double-sided instead. So he sent over his version, and, pretty much all, before confirming anything nowadays, like we'll try to ask AI, like, hey, can you kind of tear this apart and let us know, you're like a marketing expert, et cetera, to set all the various context. Can you help orient us before we finalize? And like, this is, again, like we're not in a crazy rush here to get it. Like, it's already taken a while to sell these properties, but we want top dollar for them. So if we are going to spend extra money, we're, tight on budget from what we raised for this property. So it's like, let's make sure this is super, super targeted and as high quality as possible, so that we're not, wasting any of our time or dollars on this particular strategy here. So like, let's really, really put in the time and, get extra eyeballs on this postcard to ensure that we are locked and loaded for best possible mailer. And so we got all this feedback from AI. I think, yeah, we used ChatGPT for this, and very, very helpful. There were a couple things I just disagreed with based on, I guess kind of our preference, but like the vast majority, like, again, we should kind of, like, ChatGPT has access to a lot of kind of the best marketing techniques out there, but you also have to use some of your own judgment. So we probably took in roughly 80% of what it suggested. And I was working with our ops manager, going back and forth. And I had a lot of eyeballs on this. Like, this was, again, like, you can't be afraid to get your hands dirty as a business owner. Like, no task is beneath you, particularly when it's, the overall project is like the number one priority for the business. So yeah, if I need to look over some key bullet points and, reviewing edits on a postcard that could potentially bring us, a buyer for 500 grand, roughly, for one of these parcels, like, yeah, that's worth my time. And so I was poring over this routinely, like, okay, yeah, I think some of this copy should be adjusted here, like have better citations here. We had a QR code for the property which is like really nicely well done. The broker set this up. I mean, because it's 3 separate child parcels. So he has a QR code that goes to just a drop down list of the 3 child parcels directly, and then the user can click on each one. Plus, we set up a short URL, so with a vanity slug on it, so people could just type it in directly. We had some other edits here. Like, we had an inset of Google Maps showing how far it was from the nearest city. We included, hey, this is outside the FEMA floodplain, thoughtful covenants on this, safety and convenience. Like, okay, where is it in relation to the grocery or the schools? Who is actually ranking it the number one school district in Louisiana? So like, that's per Louisiana Department of Education. Like, that's as authoritative as it gets. And again, like, really positioning it as, premium wooded home site. Like, we're not saying, hey, this is price to sell or anything like this. It's just like quality, quality, quality. And then mentioning each of the 3 lots that are available and including the best one. We're like, hey, this is the best parcel of land in this parish. Like, hands down, see it to believe it. Come out, like, just take a look. And we did include the pricing at a per acre level instead of just the raw prices, because people can do the math. It's 11.5 acres total, starting at 35K per acre. They can do, okay, that's going to be roughly 350K, but I would rather anchor lower to let people do that math and hopefully encourage other folks just to assess the quality on their own. And also saying, yeah, you could combine parcels for family compound. You could get different pricing for that. And it just has all the contact info for our brokerage and their phone number. And then on the other side of the postcard, we had 4 different images, including a primary hero image of a full aerial covering all 3 parcels. And then the other parcels all have closer up ground level photos accounting for their driveways and home site, like really beautiful shots. And then, just kind of the QR code again and some other base info on that side. So we probably did 4, maybe 5 iterations before I was like, okay, I'm satisfied on how this postcard looks here. Again, like, really making sure before we spend money on this, because we might only have one shot with some of these possible leads here, like, let's put our best foot forward. Slow market, we have to be better than anybody else. So we spent a lot of time on that. And then as far as the list prep was going, so our broker, through his list track MLS, he was able to provide kind of hotspot areas of people who were, areas of the state, of the country that were more routinely clicking on the listing. And some areas that were like tracking a bit more, even over like a month long time span, or like, did they click on this area, a month ago and then potentially just a week ago. So it's unclear whether it could be the same people, because you can't track the IPs or anything. It's just like, it presents a map and then it shows, a little hotspot, like, red, orange, yellow, green, etc. So it's not that granular. Like, you can't just pick out precisely who was this household that actually looked at the property. And so, initially I presented this to our ops manager. It's like, okay, figure out where these areas are, like try to get as granular as possible and then see, can we like lasso whoever the owners are in the area to select and mail out to. But, most of those hotspots, some were within cities like New Orleans and stuff. And like they were in deeper infill lot areas where, even within that hotspot that shows up, like that could have represented, 100, I think my ops manager was even saying like it was like, close to 1,000+ households that could theoretically have been the ones clicking on the link. So even if it was like just one person clicking, I mean, you risk, first a lot of mailer expense for folks who might not be qualified leads for the property. So like it's just not the best route. I wish we could be a lot more granular with it. Or if you just had an infinite budget, yeah, you could just like spray and pray in that hotspot area and hope you find that right person to bring them back to call in. But we had to be more strategic. Like, yeah, I don't want to spend more than like $1,000 at the moment of additional marketing spend on this. And so we went back to ChatGPT and like, okay, let's use ChatGPT, like figure out, okay, we use data tree, some of these other services to figure out who the best possible buyers are. Like, let's create a prompt and figure out what it would suggest for best buyer profiles locally, even outside of those hotspots. But we also did include, hey, here are the hotspots that are available. How would we select for this? And here's our budget as well. And ChatGPT 5, like, I know some people have had some issues with it. Overall, I've been pretty impressed with the just thoroughness of the answers there, because it just gave like priority tiers of where, who to send to. And it's like, okay, recent acreage buyers of like, 5 to 20 acres over the last 3 years. Like that's really good. Are some of those one-off buyers? Possibly, but if they've bought recent acreage and we have like the best stuff on the market, could be really interesting. And plus they probably would be maybe close to the price point that we're selling at. And then, for the nearest neighbors, around like, 2 miles of property there with, similar acreage, go ahead and try them. We have a lot of directional signs, local presence in the area, but, it's worth just kind of getting that potential interest up. Like, hey, FYI, we have like a really solid property here. And then also active rural builders, custom home GCs, land-friendly agents. So they were like, okay, you could devote some of your budget there. And that first one, like the recent acreage, I was like, okay, use like 60% of your budget for that, 20% for the nearest neighbors, 10% for the rural builders, and then like 10% for high equity homeowners in the hot zone suburbs, which that's pretty interesting. The fact that you could actually, sort by high equity, in those neighborhoods. So that is a way to target those hot spots and, folks who might have, HELOC potentially, or, they have limited amount of mortgage left potentially, or some, basically equity built up into their homes. So they could sell it reliably for an exit if they want to go up acreage, like what's kind of mentioning. And then it mentioned, the full exact step-by-step for data tree. Here's exactly how you pull those particular potential buyer pools, how to sort them and everything. And so it's like, this is really, really solid. And then, after my ops manager, he scrubbed all the lists and everything. So I think we ended up at like roughly 5%. Some of these people had, PO boxes that click to mail wasn't able to send to, but it was minority. A lot of those addresses were broken potentially. And so that was the route that we decided to go on for this strategy. And we're like, okay, there could be some that aren't quite fitting within there. So we could kind of have a secondary list that like, maybe we do get some response from this mailer. Let's see if we get some calls, maybe some site visits. Maybe even a buyer for 1 or 2 of the properties. And then we could consider expanding out our mailer based on this first one. Plus, for like the highest priority folks, I don't know, like the biggest acreage owners, maybe 10% of that list, we could also skip trace directly and then call and text those folks individually to see, again, not from a desperation perspective, but like, hey, maybe you haven't seen, some of the best land, if not the best land in this entire parish. Just wanted to make you aware to target those people from an additional multi-touch perspective. That is how we are approaching this. We're about to mail it out, so I'll be able to report on it shortly here. I've went over the plan with our broker, and this sounds really solid. He's going to be sending over more data for us to work with as well too. But just wanted to share this with you all. Again, this is the extra elbow grease. We put in a lot of time into this very specific strategy just over this last week. A lot of hours were poured into this. Because again, it's just top priority within our business. And, sometimes in these difficult markets, you have to go the extra mile to land these sales. And are you just going to sit on your hands and just wait? Or, be creative and okay, what are we really pulling every last lever to, find a buyer here? As you find one buyer, your whole outlook changes. So that was the whole intention behind that. Hopefully this is helpful for your own usage. And, I'll probably write about this in the newsletter. I think it's a really good topic, good tactical updates. And so with all of that in mind, seriousland.capital for any of your funding needs. Again, $50K minimum purchase price deals. Land Daily Diligence Facebook group for zero cost review of your land deals. I just reviewed a larger subdivide yesterday on that and got really great feedback from the person who sent it. He's one of the bigger subdivide operators in the industry. And it's always great to hear that our feedback is being highly valued. Always trying to get better at this skill. And then Land Pricer AI, which I just mentioned at the top. We are chugging right along here. Product is looking great. Expecting the launch end of September. So subscribe and share. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.